Okay, this is Jacob Schmidt with DeerHuntingSchool.com. I'm gonna take a look at a property here. Any other guys look at this, you might gain something from it. First off, for Chip here, I thank you. Thank you for letting me take a look at this. And any of you guys you could leave a comment and thank Chip for sharing. Letting me share the things about his property on YouTube here. He's paying for a video analysis of his property on YouTube. It could be educational to some of you other guys. But anyways, I'm going to take a look at this property and Chip. It looks like a good looking property to me. It's got a lot of logging and stuff like that taking place around it and on it. But it has some diversity on the property. Okay, now first off, here on this here's the topo map, and it's got really three ridges that run across the property. You've got one right here. You've got one here, and then one really is running down the road here. But nevertheless, you got three ridges. You got these points. A lot of times deer like to bed on these. They like to get up on these points and bed in areas like this. Here's another area. That's the topography standpoint of it. And then you've got the habitat. And on them points here, if you look at this, if you look at the property here, it's right here. I'm just going to click here, and it's kind of, that this point right here, it's really right there, pretty close to this food plot that's here, like right in here. That point's like right out in there, and you've got a lot of thick habitat around this here. You've got this strip stuff. You've got some diversity. You've got this food plot here. This road and stuff comes through there, but nevertheless, you've basically got a ridge that runs right through here. Let me look at this. Correct. Yeah, it runs right at the top. Runs from that corner kind of down. So then you've got a ridge running through here. Something like that. And you've got a ridge that really just runs down the road here. There's a point, here in this area, and then this drops off in here. So that is your topography part of it. Deer like to, bucks a lot of times when they're cruising, they'll cruise these ridges, especially when it's open hardwoods and stuff. Now this is going to be a little different because you've got the really diverse habitat. I mean, I think the deer will cruise the ridges. Obviously, the wind will be more consistent on top of the ridge. Like this. So this food plot here should be right there on the side of the ridge. This one here. This food plot here is down in the valley. This food plot's going to be right on top of the ridge. This is going to be right on that point that's there. When I look at this property, the topography isn't what really jumps out at me. The diverse habitat just really jumps out at me on this property, because if this was an open hardwood, and it was all the same habitat, I would really be keying in on this topography, hunting these points, things like this, and that's where, when you have topography and you have habitat, you've got to really look at them separately, and then you've got to look at them together, because the deer are going to travel the edges and things like that on the habitat. They're going to feed in certain areas, and then they're going to bed in certain areas. They're going to bed in the thick covers. They're going to bed in these old clear cuts. They're going to bed in these really thick areas, this strip stuff on this property. So I'm going to roll it back here real quick. We're just going to go back in time and look at some of the time frames when this stuff was cut. Hopefully we can get a good. It looks like here in 2011, not too far from, yeah, okay. So here we've got, this is 2006, okay, and then I wish there was more pictures of this property. And then this takes us to 2011, so it was cut between 2006 and 2011, okay, and then it's grown up, and it actually, to me, let's roll it back again. It looks like it might have even already been thinned once since then. That may just be the clear cut scrolling back. Yeah. So basically, you have your property is really just a huge thicket. Looking to me like it's just really a big thicket. As far as most of it goes. Now you've got some diversity going on here, and that is going to definitely play a huge factor in hunting this thing. Okay, and this is way back. Looks like you've got a little bit of ag stuff going on here around it. Maybe just hay. Yeah, it is hay. There's the hay bales all in the field. But nevertheless, a lot of times you've got alfalfa and stuff in these fields. It's going to be a little bit higher quality food than just any other open field or whatever. You may have your neighboring property here. Well, there could be some food plotting going on here. Here and then here. But you've definitely got logging all around you. I know I'm moving the map around a lot here. Okay, so these were this here. This is your neighbor's property. This is very important. This was thinned between 2013 and 2015. These were stripped. So let's just say 2014. I mean, it could have been done. This picture here is actually February of 2013. I mean, it could have been done any time after that on this property next door to you. So let's just say 2014. So we're looking at a 2 or 3 year old strip. So it's going to be a lot of food. The deer's going to have a lot of food there. It's not going to be really super thick undergrowth yet, so that they're going to really bed in it. So I think a lot of these deer will be bedding here on your property. I mean, there's going to be some deer bedding there because they have the diverse, they have the topography. Like when these woods opened up, these deer are really going to use the topography. So what's going to happen, say you keep this lease, and then they come in, once these pines grow up, and then they come in and strip them, and this is more open for that couple years, these deer will really use these ridges and things. These bucks will cruise these ridges. They'll bed on them points and stuff like that during that time, because it's opened up, and they use that. Them bucks use them ridges a lot of times. They'll run right along the edge of it. They use that ridge as cover, and they'll run both sides. They use them points as a visual advantage. They get up on these points, these deer do, and they'll bed on that point because they're up high, they can see, and then they use that ridge behind them as cover. Okay, they use that stuff, and it doesn't affect. It's not going to affect them right now on your property because the is so thick. They don't need that. They don't need that hill for cover. They don't need that ridge for cover. They don't need that point as a visual advantage. It doesn't do them any good. They really can't see that far anyways because it's so thick. I would imagine that if you walk out in the middle of this, you're probably not going to be able to see very far on ground level. So that's going to make a huge difference there. That's something though that in the future, when they do come in and strip this, because if this was clear cut, I think what we say it was in between 11. Forgive me. Your property was clear cut in between 06 and 11. It looks like. Yeah, it was clear cut then. Sometime that's a pretty wide gap. This is June of 06, and then this is July of 11. Now this looks like it was probably cut closer to 06 to me than 11, because this here looks like it's had a couple years of regrowth in this picture. So, I mean, we're looking at close to a 10-year-old clear cut. This should be nasty thick, like super thick. Okay. I mean, obviously, you know what it looks like. But I really believe you should have quite a bit of bedding. Now the food plots, I always like. I like food plots. I like putting them in. I enjoy putting them in. I haven't killed a lot of deer on food plots, mostly because I've really hunted public land most. But here in the past few years, I have hunted a little over food plots. Mostly my wife and kids. I put food plots in. I've got some land that I could hunt really close to my house. I've put food plot there. I've got a lease, and I'm actually looking into, more larger leases. And I lease them solely for me, my family, so no one's hunting them. I really am a stickler on hunting pressure. Really big time. I mean, if you guys that are watching this video, if you followed me very long, if you've ordered any of my products, you really know that I'm a stickler on hunting pressure. I will swim a river almost to find somewhere that has low hunting pressure. I mean, I really will. Actually, I won't swim it because I have a boat I take, but I have a spot that I've been kind of looking at. I haven't had time to hunt it. I've always I've wanting to hunt it like late in the year, but I've just been running out of buck tags and I just haven't hunted it. But anyways, I'm going to get to hunting it. It's a spot that you have to take a boat ride for like 5-mile boat ride. And then I'm actually literally thinking about taking a canoe on my boat. I have a bass boat. I take my bass boat down there. And then I'm thinking about taking a canoe and going up a creek that's too small for a boat. It's crazy. But anyways, I'm a huge stickler on hunting pressure. So anytime you can keep the hunting pressure down, especially on these food plots, is huge. And I liked when I looked at this property immediately. You said the guy before you put these food plots in, I would definitely keep these food plots. I would definitely keep the pressure off of them as much as possible. and utilize them when they're good. Deer hunting, you have small windows of opportunity when hunting, especially when you're talking about killing mature deer. Okay, you have small windows of opportunity. um, One is the very beginning of the season for most places. Then you have the rut. Then you have late season. But there's little windows of opportunity in between that can pop up, especially when you have food plots like this and you have multiple food plots, especially if you keep the pressure off of them. Because what happens is, I hear this deer going nocturnal, and I don't believe there's a such thing as a nocturnal deer. Now I believe there are deer will find an area and they'll stay in that area, and it's a very small area, um, and they'll only move in that small area during daylight. Now, if you can keep the hunting pressure off of the deer, the hunting pressure off of these food plots, and only hunt them when that key time is when these deer are key in on there, and these deer are using them, especially mature deer. They set up very small core areas. Deer that live to be old, especially bucks. Now does you may not. I mean, it's hard because it's hard to tell. When you see a group of does, I mean, you can tell the older does. You can tell the old doe when you have four does out there. But if a doe and a yearling and a fawn comes by, you can't really judge that doe as well as when a buck comes by. You have some form. You can look at that deer and you have a little better judgment of how old that deer is. Just by looking at his rack. I mean, a lot of people say, well, you can't judge deer by a rack, and you can't super accurately, but for the most part, you can tell a 1.5-year-old buck compared to a mature buck. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's not so obvious when a doe comes by you. But that older doe will be just like that old buck. She will find really small areas to live in where there's low hunting pressure. And I don't know if it's so much as the deer actually find them areas or they luck into it and they live for a long time because they're in them areas. I don't know which it is. But I do know that mature bucks will shift areas because I have one that I've hunted for a few years, and he has shifted on me because I messed up. I didn't get him the first time. So, anyways, I do know that they will shift their what I call their core area on you. But anyway, so with these food plots, there are, the first thing is the pressure. Keep the pressure off of them. If you can keep the pressure off these food plots, that's going to be huge. Okay, I mean, it is going to be a major plus. Okay, now the other part about these food plots are deer key in on certain foods at a certain time of the year, and that's just how they do it. Now, early season, I mean, I haven't measured none of these food plots yet. Matter of fact, let's just measure them real quick. I should have already done that. Let's just measure them in feet. So that food plot this food plot here is going to be probably 3/4 of an acre, I think. That food plot there's going to be small and slender. Maybe a 1/2 acre. I don't know. I have a calculator on the internet I use. So we got 500. This is about an acre food plot here. And actually, them are all them food plots are pretty good size. I think 210 by 210 is an acre. I'm going to real fast So we're gonna go just real quick, 577 by 110. I just want to see this. Oh, that's an acre and a half food plot. Awesome. I've got some recommendations here. I'm gonna go ahead and do them all real fast. So, just real quick, because I know you just leased this property. This one here is 1.5 acres, almost right at it. 1.5 acres. Let me end this out real fast. That's 150 by 320. So that was a little over an acre. I mean, you got some good sized food plots. Okay. Oh my lord, I hit the wrong button. So this one's, I should have done measured these out, but this is going to be huge in what you plant, because that's what I'm fixing to talk about. This one's like 1.1 1/10 of an acre. Oh my lord. This was going to be a little harder to measure. The reason I want to measure these out, so this was like 480 by 90 foot. The reason I want to measure these out is because you really want to put a little diversity in there. So this one's right at an acre. It's just under an acre. So this one's 0.9 of an acre, so 9/10 of an acre. And then we'll measure this one more right here. If you can put food, different types of food in them for different times of the year. So this one's going to be 360 by 100. It's going to be close enough. And 360. That's the smallest food plot. It looks like it's almost 0.8. This one's 0.8. Okay, so if you can keep the pressure off of them, and then you can have diversity. Okay, basically different foods at different times that the deer are really going to key in on. Okay, you're by doing that is you're going to add deer hitting, this food plot at one time, and then they'll key in on this food plot at another. They'll key in on this one at another, and then this one at another. If it was me, I know that this is an acre. This is an acre, and depending on your deer density, I'm really keying on at least one of these being soybeans. I honestly would plant both of them soybeans. They may get tore up, but I'll tell you, Eagle Seed soybeans, and they have a new variety. I seen Grant Wood planted some last year on Growing Deer TV that done pretty good in a smaller food plot. Now, in this acre and a half one, I think you'll be fine. as long as your doe numbers aren't super high. And if that's the case, you're going to have to harvest some does. You need to take some does out if they're wiping your food plots out. I honestly would be looking for them because you have a double whammy. Plus, you can overseed them food plots. I would definitely be looking at some clover. I don't know if you can. If you can, you may be able to throw clover in some of these areas like this. Stuff like that. You might, on the edges of these, put a little clover. But I would definitely put soybeans. What you do with soybeans, you give them summer food, and then I know you're really south here, but you're going to also give them that winter food, all in one bunch. And also when I plant my soybeans, I come back in the fall and I overseed them with a winter mix. I like rye and oats. And where you are, I would go with a rye oat mix. That's just me, and I would overseed them. I would go one of these other food plots, the same, a rye oat mix, and then you can just test out in the other ones. You could put some brassicas. I mean, with the rye oats, you can. These food plot, and then this one. If it was me, I would go like a 50-50 mix. I would go half of it brassicas and half of it rye oats. You don't have to go like dead down the center. You could split it like this way, or you could do it in fourths or something like these ends. You could do a rye oats, and in the middle you could do brassicas, something like that. A mix. You could also you could put in Australian winter peas. I planted some of them. The deer seem to like them, but they absolutely hammer the rye and the oats. And then when I say rye, I'm talking a cereal rye, not a ryegrass. They'll eat the ryegrass, but the cereal rye is a lot higher protein for them. It's a lot better food source. By doing that, you're going to, and I would definitely overseed my soybeans with a rye and oats. I put a 50-pound bag of each per acre when I'm overseeding. When I'm just putting just that, I go a little bit heavier. And you could go a little heavier maybe. Like in these two plots, you might put 75 pounds in each. Oh, because you're overseeding, you're not tilling it up and then spreading it into loose soil. You're spreading it into soybeans that are standing, and you want to leave your soybeans there. Deer are going to eat the pods in the winter. They're going to feed on them like crazy early bow season. I mean, like crazy. You'll kill deer on them. You'll have deer on them, and you will be surprised. I mean, the deer love them. You'll have to get your lime right. Get you some soil samples, whatever. And then these plots, this plot here, I would do the same thing. If it was me, I would go a rye oat mix, maybe half of it rye oat mix and the other half brassicas, something like that. Or you could go a rye oat mix, part of it, maybe one end, both ends clover, rye oat mix in the center, something like that. The clover will last you year round. The rye oat mix you're going to have to plant every year, and the soybeans you'll have to plant in every year. But if you've got the openings, you've got the food plots, I would definitely utilize them. And I would take advantage of that. It's going to have your deer healthier. I know you're extremely far south. The deer aren't going to suffer from a brutal winter. And by doing this, you're going to spread your deer out. Your deer are going to lock in on them soybeans early bow season. They're going to abandon them about really, from what I've found, especially with the eagle beans, they abandon them about the time the acorns start dropping. And then they're going to abandon all your food plots at that time, and then they'll key back into them in the late season. And that late season for you probably going to be kicking off when the rut's really kicking off. Okay, your food plots are really going to key back in. Okay. Now, you know, you want to run cameras on them all the time, on all your food plots. You want to keep your cameras running on them, and you can check them, you know, periodically. And what you're looking for are bucks that are using them if you're buck hunting. You're looking at when the deer are hitting them, and you'll see waves. There'll be waves when the deer are coming in them, and when the deer are really hitting them hard, and then there'll be times when they're not hitting them so hard. And if you have diversity, like I'm talking, you will have deer that are using these food plots at different times. They'll key in on the beans at one time, and then they'll go over to the rye at one time, and they'll make shifts, okay, at certain times. And also by them being separated like that, you'll have, you know, if the deer are keying in on beans, you may have a group of bucks hitting these and a group of bucks hitting these, okay, and then vice versa. You'll have deer. Now, and then obviously you're going to want stands on your food plots. Sometimes you can put multiple stands on them, especially if you're bow hunting. If you're just bow hunting, you can put multiple stands on one food plot. Okay. Now, to get to the looking at the property, this property really looks awesome to me, because right here, actually, give me just a second. I'm gonna scroll out just a little bit. We're gonna get rid of this first of all. Okay. So right here, and I know this is off your property, but it's important because it bumps up to it. And here, this is one type of habitat. Okay, this is another, and actually that connects here. This is one type. And this is one type, or this is, let's say this is type 2. This is type 2. Basically, your whole property nearly is type 2. The food plots obviously are a different type of habitat. Type 2. I mean, I'm circling all this. It's not all quite the same. And this is type 2, other than you got these little fingers here, and them come in important. What I really like is you've got all this habitat. You've got this type of habitat here that's large area here. You have a pretty large area here. You've got a really large area here. You've got a large area here. And then right in the middle, you have habitat type number 3. Okay, you have habitat type number 3. 3 here. 3 here. You have habitat type number 3, number 3, number 3. And these down here might not be so much. These are little creeks, but I think they may be mostly pine growing on them. And you have habitat type number 3 here. But what you have is you have large areas of mostly predominantly pine. Now here you're going to have a lot of browse here, okay? You're going to have some browse in this type 2, but you're going to have a lot of bedding covers, a lot of thick cover. The browse should be starting to kind of die back, especially when you get in the center. Them trees should be starting to fill in and shade that out where the browse is the ground starting to die back. This type number 3 is going to have a mix of hardwoods in it. You should have some oaks in there. in this line, in this line, you should have oaks, some oaks in there, and then here and then here, you should have some oaks. So when the acorns are dropping, okay, if you got oaks in here, and you should, I really don't see why you shouldn't have at least a little bit of a mix of oaks up in here. When the acorns start dropping, you've got these large areas here and here of deer coming out into here to feed. You've got a small area of, when the acorns start dropping, preferred food source, period. They're going to abandon your food plots. They're going to abandon, if you got feeders, you got corn out, whatever, they're going to abandon that for the most part, and they're going to lock in on them acorns. Well, when you have large areas of bedding cover and small areas of acorns, the deer are going to pile into them, and they pile into them big time. It's a must to have deer stands on them. It is an absolute must. I really like where fingers come together, like here. Like you've got this and this and this. I really like areas like this because I feel like, hey, there's deer all in here. I can't tell you where they're going to bed. Okay, I can't say, hey, well, the deer's going to bed right here. Okay, or deer's going to bed right here. But nevertheless, they're going to come into here. They're going to feed, and they're going to work their way up at this, especially on these edges and stuff. And when they do that, these points, like here, where these fingers meet, it's conversion points. They're higher likelihood of deer being here, coming through here, feeding. Matter of fact, I have a lease that looks just kind of like this. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot wider fingers. It's more of like, kind of like this. It's more kind of like this, a wider thing, and the deer they dump out in there and they feed on them acorns, just period. Just a lot of white oaks in there, stuff like that. And then when you get down here, no different. I like this area here. If I was hunting a gun, it would be hard for me not to have, say, a box stand here, hunting this road. As deer cross this, they should cross it. Now, it would be hard for me with a bow not to have a stand right in here where these meet, okay, right in here. And you've got so much bedding cover around this. You've got large areas for deer just to dump off anywhere into here, and feed their way up and down this, especially on these edges. It's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of browse right on the edge, but it's where that transition point is, where it comes from this habitat to that, and you should have acorns dropping along these creek. Okay, plus in the rut, bucks are going to like to cruise them creeks, and that's what this is, a creek. They can't log along the creek. So they have to leave that cover on that creek, and these points here are good spots. And then here, where these come together, like here you've got one, here you've got one. Okay, they're where they're meeting. These were deer. When you have all this large bedding, all these deer are dumping into this to feed. At night, and then they're coming out of it in the morning. They're working their way, feeding in the morning, and they're going back to wherever they're going to bed out in here. When that's taking place, you have to be on them. You have to forget about the food plots. It's a really good time to let your food plots rest, start keying in on this, stuff like that. One more thing I just noticed a minute ago was you've got a pond. Okay, you've got a creek, and this is probably the feeder creek coming to the pond, or or the water's coming the other direction. I don't know which way the water runs. But nevertheless, you've got this creek, here, and you've got this pond. Okay, you've got a big oak, kind of a mixed flat here. You've got the same thing down here. Okay, on this property line, you can zoom in here. You've got a double funnel. That's what you have. And you're going to have to be careful, because I think I can see the property line here. If this is your property, this long shooting lane looking thing, and this long shooting lane looking thing, if you're a gun hunter, you need stands there on both sides. Okay. I would, if it was me, I would key the stands in kind of tight here and kind of tight here. And I would see if I couldn't get me some shooting lanes here, because you're going to have bucks cruising this creek. You're going to have deer coming out into here, from wherever. It's this pond is going to funnel them tight in this area and this area, because they're not going to want to swim through the pond. They're going to come out here to come out into this big open flat. And that's why here is really good, because you can shoot this lane here. These deer here are going to come out here, or they're going to come out here and then work their way that way, or vice versa, coming back to bed. And then the exact same thing is going to go on down here. They're going to come out here. Now they may come out here and then walk that direction, but they're going to come out here, or they're going to come out here in this corner, and this pond's going to funnel them either here or here. I think it's a great stand location. I don't know how many people's hunting it. It sounded to me like you had at least all to yourself. By the emails, a short email and everything. And then down here, no different. You've got this oak finger and stuff that's running out through here, and I know part of it's off the property. Down in here could possibly be a good area, like here, where these deer are coming out of here and here. You've got good access down through here, to catch these deer. This is not near as good looking as some of this over here, because you have just huge area. I think you said this is 225 acres. So you probably got 200 acres of pine plantation where they're growing pines. You've got 4 acres of food plot, pretty much. And then you've probably got 20 acres of these creek beds. Okay, you got some of it, that's road there that cuts through there. You've got good access points with the roads, things like that. I know that this area you should have high deer numbers, so that's one thing that's concerning with say the beans, stuff like that. But that's the way I see this property. It's really, I like it. It kind of looks like, it doesn't really look like the property I lease, but mine's different. It's half pine plantation, half bottoms. And then the surrounding property is all pines. So I have all the hardwoods, and all the deer come out of the pines bedding, and they dump into the bottoms. And then I also have a pipeline that runs there. It's mostly for my wife and kids to hunt on. There's high deer numbers, and they like seeing a lot more deer, kind of thing. But this area here, I don't know the area, but I've studied deer density maps for years and years and years, and I know there's high deer density down in here. So one other thing, early season, you should have deer feeding out in here at night, and they're working their way back in. And I don't know. This is some of this private house. I don't know if there's a way you could get out here and see, if you could watch these fields, because sometimes when you have fields like this, if you could see them, you can catch, big bucks group of bachelor group bucks out in here in the edge of these fields and these corners or something. And then they're coming back on your property. You can find their route and you can hunt them, on the edge of your property. But nevertheless, I don't think with your food plots, I don't think that's going to be a huge deal. I mean, you've got 4 acres of food plots you can plant, or actually a little more, because one's an acre and a half, one's a little over, one's 1.1 acre, one's 0.9, and one's 0.8. So you got a little over. You got about 4.5 acres of food plots, and I would definitely utilize them. If you have any other questions, Chip, feel free to email me. I'm looking at the property. If you have any questions about this or that, anything really, if I can help you out, I will. I appreciate you letting me take a look at it. If anyone else seen this video and learned anything, I hope you did. And it's on YouTube, and I appreciate you, Chip, for letting us put it up there on YouTube. And other people's going to learn from it. Because there's other people that have properties similar like this, things like that. And there's a lot of these southern properties, of these pine areas that have these creeks running through them. And when they create big bedding areas. And all one other thing real quick, I apologize. I done talked about the topography is going to come in standpoint when they thin this, but when they do it, all these pine areas, they evolve. You start out with early cutting. Let's say let's just do this. Let's go to 1 to 4 year, and then from 5 year to say about 10 year. And then you go from about 10 to 15. It's actually not quite 10, and then after that you're 15 plus. Okay, this is the time when they cut them. So they cut them here. So you got actually from 0 to 4, from the day they cut them. Well, not the day they cut them, but as soon as it starts regrowth to about that 4 year, you have just tons of food. Okay, I mean these deer are just like a massive food plot. This is logging areas. Okay. This is even when they strip them. They come in, they'll plant them, they'll grow up, and then even when they strip them or whatever, when they do that, they open the sunlight in, and the sunlight hits the ground, and you have rapid regrowth at ground level, and it creates food that deer can eat, just massive amounts. People hate when they come in and log hardwoods, but it's actually better for the deer. It would be best if they could come in and do a timber stand improvement in some areas, and then maybe logs, and then just clear cut some others, because this timber stand improvement is going to leave the acorns, plus it's going to create regrowth at the ground level. What happens when you have that regrowth, all them plants come up, okay, and they grow in there. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you're in a logged area. If you keep this lease for long enough, you're going to go through every one of these stages of this, because they're going to come in, they're going to strip it, they're going to come in, they're going to clear cut the stuff again, and they're going to continuously cycle through this. So you have just tons of food at that time. And then it keeps growing to about that 5-10 year. And it's depending on how much rain you had, the years, this could vary a year or two, depending on that. So at this point, you have at 5 to 10, the stuff's starting to get really thick. It's getting hard to walk through. It's getting stuff like that. The deer really start bedding in it big time. They usually actually start bedding in it earlier than 5 years. That's why I said it varies some. So you got a lot of bedding and you got a lot of food still. And then the food really starts dying out. 10 years, this stuff starts dying out big time. Actually, probably about 8 years. Maybe this is off a couple of years, really. But anyways, you'll notice it. The undergrowth at ground level will begin to die back. It'll just be brown pine needles and a lot of dead stuff. But at that point, all you have, you just really have a lot of bedding. with very little food. Okay, so basically you have a lot of land that has a really thick cover and no food, pretty much. And at that point, your food plots will come in to play big time because you're going to have all this area where a lot of heavy cover and the deer can hide in, but then they don't have a lot of food. Okay, because deer have to have food, they have to have water, and they have to have cover, and then one other thing, they have to have space or area to live in, to have numbers of deer. So they have to have these three things. So when you get to this 10 to 15 year time frame, you run out of the food, the water. You got the creek, you got the pond here, stuff like that. So there's water on really close to the property, so that's not a big deal. So you have this. So you run out of this bedding where your food plots are going to come in big time. That's probably the time frame where they're going to mow your food plots down. And then as you get over 15 plus years, it really starts thinning up at the bottom where really you're going to have a little bit more food come back. You're going to have the bedding. It goes back to really a topography, what the topography is at that point, because you're going to have, a little food that's going to start growing. You got some trees die, whatever. But it's really a mature stand. You're not going to have, it's really not that good a habitat for deer, to be honest with you. But somewhere, usually around that point, they come in and they strip it or cut it or something, and they start this process all over again. It's usually somewhere around that 15-year mark. They'll start the process all over again, and when they do, the carrying capacity of that land goes up big time because you just have massive amounts of food. And then a lot of times you lose your bedding cover for a few years, and they'll go bed somewhere else, or they'll bed on one of these points, or they'll bed on the side of a ridge, and the deer will start traveling them ridges and stuff that like I talked about the topography just a little bit. I didn't spend much time on it because it really doesn't apply to you right now. It will once they recut it. You'll notice the bucks will cruise the ridges. They're still going to feed in your food plots, things like that. Now, if you don't have cover close by, it may be a little tougher getting mature deer to come into there in the daytime. If they come in and they clear cut this, your food plots, I would keep them up, but they're not going to be that good. At least the ones that are in the middle of the clear cut. Like this one might be pretty good because it's close to this cover. This one might be pretty good because it's close to this cover here. This one might be pretty good because it's close to this cover. But this one here would not. I really don't think it'd be very good because it'd be out in the middle of a clear cut. Okay, the deer don't really need it. And I would keep it up because you don't want to lose it and have to do all the work to get it back, because that's a lot of work. If you've ever put in a food plot, you think, well, that's a lot of work. But if you've ever actually cleared for a food plot and then put a food plot in, that's a whole bunch of work. And you got to usually have equipment to do it. So anyways, that's what's going to happen on this property, or any property that you have that's logging. You're going to go through that cycle, and hopefully it's a never-ending cycle. It's a renewable resource. The lumber is a renewable resource, and it generates very good deer habitat, period. A lot of guys get mad when they clear cut, and yeah, it stinks when they come in and clear cut a really good buck hunting spot that you've been killing a couple bucks on every year, and they run it for a while. But it's awesome in a way that it provides so much food and so much better habitat for deer. So anyways, Chip, I appreciate it. If you have any questions, like I said, shoot me an email. I'll do best I can to help you out. If anybody else, that finds this interesting or whatever, for more information about deer hunting, habitat, anything like that, check out deerhuntingschool.com for more information on deer hunting. And I appreciate it, Chip, and have a good day, man. Bye-bye.